Hello, greetings. Welcome to Chapter 7 and the Excel lesson for this week. This week's Excel lesson is found on page 413 and 414. It is ATC 7.9 and it's a spreadsheet analysis using Excel. And it says set up the following spreadsheet comparing Vaughn and Christ companies. So if you look down there at the bottom of that page, you'll see a sample of what they want us to set up. So right over here, to start out with, I'm going to put in my name and you would put in your name. Now, we always start building spreadsheets with the A column. So as I look at the A column, I'm just going to type in these entries. So we have cost of goods sold on line 4, and on line 5 we have gross profit, and then we skip line 6, and on line 7 we have gross profit percentage, and then we skip line 8, and on line 9 we have accounts receivable. And on line 10 we have allowance for doubtful accounts. Allowance for doubtful accounts. And then we have net realizable value. And then we have accounts receivable turnover, and line 14 is blank, and on line 15 we have average days to collect. So those are all the headings in A, and if you come up here to the top in the column between A and B, you'll have that black crosshair in there, and you double click on that and it'll open A up wide enough for all of these account names. And if I look down their list, mine looks like theirs. Everything is flush to the left hand margin. Allowance for doubtful accounts is the widest, and that's the widest, and so they just look like the way that it's presented in the book. Now if I go to B, I have Vong, and I have Vong and sales in these opening cells to help you get your bearings on where these would go. Now for Vong, I have to go to the Home tab and make them bold because they're bold. I have to go to the Home tab and underline them with the underline function, not with the border function. And then I have to go to Home and center them. And that will get Vong looking just the way they have it on theirs. The sales are $800,000, and this is a first number in a list, and for accounting rules that means we set it up as currency. So I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to come all the way over to the far right for Format. I'm going to Format Cells. I'm going to make this currency. I'm going to make it no decimal points. It's got the $ symbol, and I want it to be black parentheses as to format the cell. So currency, 0, decimal points, a $, and negative. And if I look at the sample, it looks just the way I want it to look. So I'm going to go okay. Now that all those dollars just mean that it's not wide enough. So if I just double click between the B and the C, it'll open up to be wide enough. Now cost of goods sold is $600,000. And now I'd like this to be formatted. So I'm going to do Format, Cells. I want this to be a number. I want it to have no decimals. I want it to use the 1,000 dividers, and I want a negative with parentheses. So it's $600,000 for cost of goods sold. And then accounts receivable down here is $130,000. And I enter, and then I come to home, and I go to format and format cells, and I want a number, and I want it to, now actually I'm going to make this one currency so that I get the dollar sign. Well, no, I'm not going to, okay, I'm going to make this a number. I'm going to take out the decimal points. I want the 1,000 separator with the commas, black negatives with parentheses, and so here we go. Home, format, format cells, format number, no decimal points, the 1,000 separator, the negative number black with parentheses, and okay. And it comes out the way I want it to. And allowance for doubtful accounts is 10,000. Now I think I just formatted that cell by mistake, so there, that's all taken care of. So my B column looks pretty much like their B column. And when I look at this under home, it is flush to the left-hand margin. Now for C, it's a very narrow column, so I come over between the C and the D, and I pull that column back to be more narrow so that I have some separation between these two companies. Then I have to put in Chris's name. So CRIST, and that's there. And then I need it to be in bold, and I need it to be underlined. So I go back to home and click underline. I go back to home and I center this in the alignment area, and now I have that looking just like the bond looks and like the book looks. And so then I put in $1,100,000, and I have to come back and do home, format cells, format cells. I want currency. I want no decimal places. I want this sign. I want it to be a negative black with parentheses. And I have it looking just like they do. For cost of goods sold, it's $660,000. So I put that in there. Now, under home, here in numbers, there's some items you can work with, the dollar sign and the commas, and if you like doing it that way, you're welcome to do it that way. It'll look the same when we're finished. Home, format cells, cells format, and then format cells, and then I want it to be a number. I want no decimal places. I want it to use the 1,000 separator with the comma, and I want it to be negative numbers in black parentheses. So I have that in there, and then $270,000 for accounts receivable, and come back to home, go to format to cells and format. In the home toolbar, format cells. I want it to be a number. I want it to have no decimal points. I want them to use the 1,000 separator, and I want commas with black letters, and so I have that cell formatted. In this cell, it's $27,000 for allowance for doubtful accounts under CRIST. So I want to go to home tab. Using this tab, I want to come over here to the cells and format, far over on the right side. Format cells. I want it to be a number. I want it to use 2 decimal places, and I want a black negative, and I want the 1,000 separator in it. So I look at all the things on that sample. It looks just like the way I want it, so I put it in. So where it says set up the following spreadsheet comparing these two, I have set up exactly what they have. And now I'm good to turn the page and see what's next. For this company, compute gross profit. Okay, so I'm going to compute gross profit. So the first thing I want to do is come up to I want to click on cost of goods sold because that's where I'm going to start the calculation. I want to come to home and I want to use the border bar in the fonts, and I want to underline that because I'm signaling to the reader that I've done some math at this point. For cost of goods sold, it's a subtraction. So I want to come over here and type in front of cost of goods sold, less. And then I want to put a minus in front of the 600,000 so that I have that number in there correctly. And then now I want to do a total. I want to total these two numbers. And so I'm going to do home and auto format sum. It'll take those cells and it'll give me 200,000. Now it's giving me the dollar sign because it's a total, and I can leave that on there or I don't have to. And when we get finished, I'll show you what we're going to do. But now for Krista, I have to do the same thing. I have to come to home and put in a bottom border under the fonts so that I'm telling it I'm doing math. I have to put the minus sign in front of the 660,000 because I want it to subtract. Whoops. And then I want it to sum. So I'm going to do home, auto sum, and enter. Now, technically, these have dollar signs under them because they're ending this analysis, but actually they're only an insert from an income statement. So I'm going to take those dollar signs out of there. So I went to home, come across the home toolbar, over here to format, click down at the bottom of the menu on format cells, and I'm going to make that a number. And I don't want the currency. I do want the thousand separator, and I want black parentheses for a negative number. So now I'm going to do OK, and I don't have any dollar signs in those entries. Now for accounts receivable, to get the net realizable value, which is the next, it says, oh, I forgot one, gross margin percentage. So right here, gross margin percentage. So now I'm going to want to make this equal, and the gross margin in B5 is divided by the sales in B3, and I'm getting a number here. And then for the gross margin percentage, I want this to equal. I use the equal sign, and now it's going to be D5 divided by the sales, and it's 40. Now these two cells are not formatted the way I want them formatted because I wanted to know a percentage. So I'm going to go up to home, I'm going to come over to format, I'm going to come down to format cells, and I'm going to come here to a percentage. I'm going to take out the decimal points, and it will tell me that they're 25% and 40%. And remember that all sales can only be divided into two parts: cost of goods sold and gross margin. Cost of goods sold represents the dollar amount to the direct cost of the merchandise that I sold, and the gross profit is the contribution margin that's left over to run all the rest of the business. So cost of goods sold, all the direct cost of the sales to the customers, gross profit, the contribution margin from sales left over to cover the rest of the cost in the business. Now, as I do the accounts receivable, I'm going to do the same thing to get the net realizable value. I'm going to come here and I'm going to put an underline with the border underline, indicating that I'm going to subtract these two. So I'll put that in. The allowance, I also have to put less right in here. So I'm going to do that, and then I have to put a minus sign in front of this 10 and enter, and a minus sign in front of that 27 and enter. And now to get the net realizable value, I'm going to do home, auto sum, and enter, and I'm going to do home, and auto sum and enter. Now that's what I have, but now this accounts receivable, and that is also the start of a list. It would be in the balance sheet. So now I'm needing to put the dollar signs in here for the starting of a list. So here's a currency. I do not want it to have any decimal points. I want it to have negative numbers, and the symbol, I've got to get that dollar sign back in there. This cell didn't happen to have that, so it was a good thing I saw it. So then I'm going to do OK, and both of those have dollar signs in them, and then I have my total right here. Now if I want accounts receivable turnover, which is the next calculation, it's at the back of this chapter, and it's with our formulas. It's with our ratio analysis. It's right after financial analyst. So it's on page 380, and on 380 it says accounts receivable turnover is sales divide by accounts receivable. So I want this to equal sales divide by accounts receivable. And I get a number. And so for over here, I want this to equal sales divide by accounts receivable. Now that's giving me quite an extravagant number. I could get rid of some of those decimal points if I wanted to, some of those decimal spaces. I don't need them all perhaps, but for right now I'm just going to leave them in there. And it says then the average days to collection is to take 365, the days of the year, and divide that by these accounts receivable turnover. In Vaughn Company, the receivables are turning over 6 times a year, so almost every 2 months. Over here, they're only turning over 4 times a year, so more like 3 months. So we're going to see how these come out. So this is going to be equal to, and I'm going to put in 365 days, divide by my accounts receivable turnover, my B13, and it's 59 days. See, almost those 60 days I was talking about. And over here it's going to be equal to 365 divide, that's the number of days in the year, divide by this turnover, and it's 89 days, almost 3 months, like I said. So on this number, we should format this to be a whole day, because we don't really think of partial days. If you had somebody who was really wanting to work in partial days, you could do that, but for the most part, we work in whole days. And so it's going to be 59 days. And on this one, we're going to guess it's going to round up to 60 days because it's 89.59. So here we're going to go to Home. We're going to go to Format Cells, a number, no decimal place. So now we have 59 days, almost 2 months, 90 days, 3 months. So these two companies have kind of a different picture here about how long it takes them to get their money back and their prices and their contribution margins. So then let's look at, that completes the work for requirement. That completes the work for requirement A, because it says gross profit, net realizable value, turnover, and average days collection. So we've done that. In fact, I'm going to encourage you to maybe put a little box around this so you can see it, and come up here to Home and open up the border so you can see the whole menu. Find a nice box, the thick box, and then put that around there. Now I can really see those numbers. They're standing out to me away from the rest of this. Now you need to answer requirement B. So requirement B says, in relation to costs, which company is charging more for its merchandise? So I'm going to look here at the gross profit. Remember, sales are 100%, cost of goods sold is 75%, and gross margin then is 25%. Well, or it's 100% if gross margin is 25%, then cost of goods sold is 75%. And if this one is 40% gross margin, then costs are 60%. So relative to costs, which are this cost of goods sold, Chris company is getting, that's prices are higher and its costs are 60%, its gross margin is 40%. So most likely its costs are higher. So here for requirement B, I want you to come right up to the top and say, answer this question in relation to costs. It is most likely that Chris prices, I gotta get my eye back over here, are higher for its merchandise. Now when I do that, it gives me an answer right here in the spreadsheet so I can see it as it appears. Now with respect to the question C, requirement C says, which company is likely to incur higher financial costs? So there's a section in the chapter all about financial costs and how you might get higher financial costs. But when we look here at some of these issues that are here, they have a low contribution margin, a lower gross profit. They have a lower number of days till they get their money back, and so those might be important in how much people would charge them for finances. So which company is likely to have higher financial costs? When we look at these folks only getting their money back 4 times a year, once every 90 days, their creditors could be quite concerned about how long it takes them to get their money back, even though they have a nice gross margin. So I think you should read that section about financial costs and make a decision for C and put your answer right in there. Click on that, come up here, and then just follow the question. Again, blank, whichever one you think is likely to incur higher financial costs associated with granting credit to customers because, and then you fill that out. If you type on this line and you get out here about so far, then just come back over here and finish typing the rest on this line. You can't in Excel change from one thing to another, but you can cut and paste and put them on different lines. And then here's requirement D, which company appears to be more restrictive credit standards? So it would look like perhaps Vong has more restrictive credit standards because its people are paying them back faster. So you just want to look into that and answer how you know. So you want to look into credit standards and turnovers and then answer that section. So this brings me to an end of this demonstration on the Excel lesson. I hope you've learned how to build small spreadsheets and schedules, how to answer questions relative to the information in the schedules. Thank you for working with me on this lesson, and I look forward to working with you on the rest of this chapter.